By mid-1982, the arcade craze fades as fast as it grew.
Inevitably, there was a shakeout, and the number of arcades that were existing in America at that time, which numbered maybe about 20,000, which was a lot. It was an arcade in every town, essentially. Then it shook out so that there were only about 12,000 left, and then it shook out more, and there were only about 4,000 left.
The Pac-Man family alone isn't enough to save the ailing arcade business.
Games become unpopular when people get very good with them.
You see, Pac-Man is one of the greatest games, and the reason it's one of the greatest games is because it's also one of the hardest games. Players who become adept at it know that there are patterns.
And so now all of a sudden, instead of people playing for 30 seconds, now you have people who can come in, they'll drop a quarter in, and they'll play for an hour, or they'll play for 2 hours, or they'll play until they're just bored and go home. And that all of a sudden makes the arcade business extremely expensive.
By this time, the public's attention has already shifted to another technological boom. In the spring of 1982, home versions of popular arcade games are flooding the market.
I'd like an Atari 2600 system, please, and everything that goes with everything. You sure want everything? I want everything.
Arcade knockoffs did not have to be especially good or especially attractive. They needed to have decent gameplay, and they needed to have the name of the arcade game right on them.
But can home consoles save Pac-Man from extinction? In April 1982, anticipation rises for Atari's version of Pac-Man for the VCS.
Here comes Pac-Man, biggest game in the history of arcades. People are really excited. The pre-orders are huge. Atari is so sure that this is going to be a hit that they made more copies of Pac-Man than there were active VCSs in people's homes because people would play it, and this would be a huge hit. But the game stunk. The game really, really stunk. The ghosts keep on appearing and disappearing. They didn't move smoothly. Pac-Man didn't move smoothly. The mazes were not the same mazes that you saw in the arcade game. The dots were replaced with dashes. There was just nothing right in it.
Despite the lackluster graphics, the public loves having Pac-Man in their homes. And Ms. Pac-Man follows closely behind.
This Ms. plays only on the Atari 5200 Super System. Now you're talking.
Attempting to cash in, competitors released their own versions of Pac-Man.
There were all kinds of knockoffs. So what these companies have to do is these companies have to create something that's very Pac-Man-esque. And so you have all kinds of games that look like Pac-Man.
Odyssey, video game fun.
The most notorious case of flattery is Magnavox's KC Munchkin game for the Odyssey. Atari takes Magnavox to court and wins. Meanwhile, Pac-Man's legitimate relatives continue to flood arcades.
There's Junior Pac-Man, Baby Pac-Man, Super Pac-Man. There are all kinds of Pac-Mans.
But all the Pac-Man spin-offs in the world can't save the arcade business. By the mid-1980s, the quarters stopped flowing. The golden age of video arcades is over. Yet Pac-Man still has his loyal fans. Over the past 20 years, Pac-Man has been released on virtually every system. And the desire for high scores never wanes. In 1999, Pac-Man finally meets his match. Billy Mitchell becomes the first person to play the perfect game.
I'd say, yeah, people think I'm nuts. You have to be a little nutty to be this obsessive about something.
On July 3rd, 1999, Mitchell, the president of a Florida hot sauce company, walks into New Hampshire's Fun Spot Arcade and slides a quarter into the Pac-Man machine.
I had such a tight grip over the joystick at times, I was afraid I was going to shatter it. It was for sure the most difficult thing.
6 hours later, Mitchell manages to eat every dot, every ghost, and clear 256 screens. He actually beats the game.
6 hours isn't really any big deal. I could easily do 12 hours.
But what about those necessary breaks? You know, when nature calls.
The fact is, there's several places where you can hide them in, where you can take a break. There's places where you can hide them for up to 20 minutes. There's one place you can hide them indefinitely. It took a very high degree of knowledge of the game. When you get to the final stage, the game is different. There's invisible dots. There's dots that are there that you don't get points for. There's dots that are not there that you get points for.
The record-breaking feat makes Mitchell somewhat of a celebrity.
If I was looking for one to gain fame from, then I picked the right one.
If I'm traveling someplace and if I'm traveling with Billy Mitchell, it's interesting to see the reaction that the public gives him. He has this unique persona, and people notice that, even when they don't know that he's Billy Mitchell, the world-famous Pac-Man player.
Is he too old to be playing Pac-Man? Maybe. Am I too old to be doing what I do? Probably.
For the young or the young at heart, Pac-Man is still evolving and still a blast to play.
There are very few game characters from the early 80s who are still active in today's gaming scene. Pac-Man would be probably the main one. Pac-Man is engraved in that gaming psyche.
Pac-Man did leave an indelible mark on 20th century culture, and especially late 20th century culture.
And Pac-Man continues to enchant gamers worldwide with his latest adventure.
For Namco, Pac-Man is still very much alive.
It's a sign that everything has gone full circle, and now the original games are being recognized and given their due once again, but in a new way.
There'll always be the people who are going to think about Robotron 2084 or Defender or Donkey Kong. But the biggest group will be thinking about Pac-Man when they think about arcades in the early 80s.